In this opening, a black man faces sudden hostility at his own front door. Arrogant HOA enforcers dressed like police attempt to intimidate him. The scene builds tension through symbolic disrespect, his calm resistance, and a powerful cliffhanger, hinting at who he really is. "We don't need your kind lowering property values around here." The words cracked through the silence of midnight like a whip. Two men in cheap tactical vests stood on the porch of a suburban home, their flashlights cutting harsh beams through the darkness. They had the swagger of authority, but everything about them screamed imitation plastic badges clipped to belts, radios crackling static without any actual channels, and clipboards tucked under their arms like weapons of bureaucracy dot behind them. The neighborhood lay still. Curtains twitched in nearby houses. Unseen eyes peeked out, watching the spectacle unfold. The air carried that charged, heavy quiet, the kind that sits right before a storm. The leader of the pair, a pale man with a jutting chin and self-satisfied smirk, shoved a folded paper against the door. His knuckles rapped hard, like he owned the place. "By order of the HOA," he barked, "you're under arrest for violation of community standards." It was laughable, but his tone carried venom. Inside, the door opened slowly, revealing a tall black man in gray sweats and a t-shirt. His eyes were calm, heavy-lidded, as if this intrusion had already failed to rattle him. He didn't flinch under their flashlights. He didn't cower. He just looked at them, as though measuring their souls with a single glance. The leader scoffed at his silence. "What? Nothing to say?" "Figures. You people always think the rules don't apply." The second man, nervous, shifting from foot to foot, avoided eye contact. His partner, though, pressed forward with manufactured bravado. He yanked the clipboard from under his arm, ripped a page free, and thrust it toward the man like a warrant. The paper fluttered against his chest, meaningless, but the gesture dripped with contempt. "You either come with us quietly," the man sneered, "or we drag you out and make an example." From a window across the street, a woman whispered to her husband, "Is that real police?" she asked. He didn't answer. Nobody knew for sure. And in that uncertainty, the fake officers thrived. The tall man on the porch didn't raise his voice. He simply bent down, picked up the torn paper that had fallen at his feet, and held it between two fingers. Slowly, deliberately, he tore it in half. The sound was soft, but in the still night it carried like a gunshot. The leader's smirk faltered. Finally, the man spoke, his voice smooth, steady, dangerous in its calm. "If you're going to pretend to be police," he said, "at least learn the law." The words landed like a hammer. The smaller man's eyes widened. Something about the tone, the authority in his voice, unsettled him. This wasn't the reaction of an ordinary homeowner, but the leader couldn't let it go. He stepped forward, jabbing a finger into the man's chest. "You think you're special? You think you can disrespect us? We run this neighborhood. We'll ruin you." The man didn't move, didn't blink. He simply tilted his head slightly, as though considering how far to let the charade go. His silence pressed against them harder than any shout could. Behind him, the hallway light revealed a neat home, walls lined with books, a framed photograph of a folded American flag. The details slipped into the corner of the intruder's vision, but they didn't recognize the weight of what they were seeing. Not yet. The leader reached for his plastic badge, trying to make it gleam in the flashlight. Last chance. Step outside, hands where I can see them. The man's jaw tightened. His next words cut through the night like a blade. "You just knocked on the wrong door." The second man swallowed hard. Something in the way he said it, too precise, too certain, set off alarms in his gut. But before he could speak, the leader barked, "We're not afraid of you." The homeowner's lips curved into the faintest smile. "You should be." And with that, he stepped fully into the porch light, his eyes glinting steel. The neighbors leaning behind their curtains caught their breath. The imposters stiffened. Something was shifting, something dangerous. Cliffhanger hung heavy, a storm about to break. The quiet man they thought they could intimidate was no ordinary resident, and before the night was over, they were going to learn exactly who he was. Don't just stand there. Put him in cuffs. The leader's voice cracked in the cool night. Air, sharper now, more desperate than commanding. His hand twitched at his belt where a pair of flimsy, plastic-handled cuffs dangled. It clinked against his flashlight, hollow and cheap. The second man hesitated, his eyes flicking between the tall black man on the porch and the houses across the street where silhouettes pressed against curtains. There's people. Watching, he muttered under his breath. The leader snarled. Good. Let them see what happens when someone breaks the rules. The tall man didn't flinch. He leaned a shoulder casually against the doorframe, arms crossed, gaze steady. Rules. He repeated, his tone cool. Or your version of them? The smirk on the leader's face twitched. You think this is a game? The HOA owns this block. You parked in the wrong spot, let your lawn grow wild. And he shuffled through the clipboard, papers rattling like nervous birds. And your trash bins weren't color-coded. Violations stacked a mile high. A laugh rippled from somewhere in the dark. A neighbor, unseen, but bold enough to mock the absurdity. The leader's ears burned red. You think this is funny? He barked into the night. You'll see how funny it is when he's gone. The second man licked his lips nervously. He held out the clipboard like a shield, pointing to the scrawled list of infractions. His voice wavered as he tried to read. Section? 1-4B unlicensed. Loitering? The tall man raised one eyebrow. Unlicensed loitering, he echoed. That's creative. Another ripple of muffled laughter carried across the lawns. Windows cracked open now. People were listening more openly. The air filled with whispers. What's happening? Who are they? Why him? The leader's jaw tightened. His authority was cracking, but he doubled down, stepping closer. Look, you can play smart all you want. But in this neighborhood, we decide who belongs. And you, he jabbed a finger, you don't. The words hung heavy. The tall man's face stayed still, unreadable. He let the insult dangle, let it poison. The air. Then he straightened slowly, every inch of his frame suddenly commanding. You're very sure of yourself, he said softly. The second man shifted back a step. Something in that tone, it wasn't just calm. It was measured, practiced. Like the way officers spoke in interrogation rooms, turning silence into pressure. But the leader puffed his chest. I'm more than sure. I'm in charge. And if you don't follow orders, you'll regret it. The tall man stepped down one pace from the porch, closing the distance just enough for his shadow to fall over them in the harsh beam of the flashlight. His eyes, sharp and steady, caught the leader's. Orders, he repeated, voice low but cutting, only matter if they come from the right place. The second man swallowed hard, his grip tightening on the clipboard. His hand trembled. The flimsy papers fluttered in the breeze, a pathetic banner of authority. The leader noticed his partner's weakness and hissed, Stand your ground. Don't let him scare you. The tall man's lips curved into the faintest smirk. Scare? Me? He asked, tilting his head. You don't know what fear is yet. For a beat, silence stretched out. Then, from the shadows of the street, a child's voice piped up. Mama, why they picking on him? The question pierced deeper than any. Argument. Curtains fell back shut, ashamed. Parents hushed their children. The whole block seemed to exhale at once. The leader turned crimson. His authority wasn't just cracking, it was dissolving. He yanked the clipboard from his partner and waved it like a badge. This paper, he shouted, is all I need to take you down. The tall man's eyes flicked to the papers. His smile widened, but it wasn't warm. It was dangerous. Paper doesn't protect you, he said, voice like iron. With deliberate calm, he reached out, plucked the clipboard from the leader's hands, and held it up. The neighborhood watched as he tore the stack cleanly in half, then let the scraps drift to the ground like fallen leaves. Gasps echoed in the dark. The leader's fury flared. His face twisted, words spitting like venom. You're done. You hear me? Done. The tall man leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper meant for both imposters, yet loud enough for the audience of neighbors to feel the weight of it. No, he said. You are. The words fell like a gavel. The second man's knees seemed to buckle. He tugged at his partner's sleeve, panic surfacing. Maybe we should call it in. But the leader shoved him back, refusing to retreat. Pride burned hotter than sense. He squared his shoulders, fists clenched, glaring at the man before him. The tall man didn't budge, didn't blink. His calm was its own weapon, sharper than any blade, and somewhere in the shadows the first whispers began to shift. The neighbors weren't questioning the man on the porch anymore. They were questioning the ones who had come to tear him down. Tide was turning. Slowly, inevitably, and the imposters hadn't even realized it yet. Grab his arm. The command snapped like a whip. The leader lunged forward, plastic cuffs clattering in his hand. His partner hesitated, caught between obedience and the gnawing dread curling in his gut. The tall man didn't move. He stood perfectly still, as though rooted to the earth itself, watching them with eyes that saw more than what stood before him. The leader grunted, closing the gap, swinging the cuffs up to clasp his wrist. But before the metal could touch him, the tall man shifted. Just one step smooth, precise, unhurried, and suddenly the leader was swinging at empty air. His momentum carried him forward, off balance, nearly tumbling down the porch steps. Gasps rose from the darkness. Neighbors were no longer just peeking, they were gathering. A couple had stepped onto their lawns, arms folded, drawn by the magnetic pull of conflict. Lights flicked on one by one, illuminating the street in patches. The whole block was waking to the theater unfolding at its center. The leader cursed under his breath, spinning back around, face flushed with rage. "Think you're clever?" he spat. "You think you can embarrass me in front of them?" The tall man's voice was steady. "I don't need to embarrass you. You're doing it yourself." The words cut deep. The second man tugged nervously at his vest. Sweat trickled down his temple. "Maybe we should slow down," he whispered. But the leader snapped back, his pride louder than caution. "No, we finish this, tonight." He jabbed a finger at the tall man, his voice booming across the lawns. "This man is a threat to our community. He doesn't belong here. And he puffed his chest. "I'll make sure he's removed." Murmurs stirred among the neighbors. The word remove carried a bitter edge, heavy with history, heavy with hate. Some frowned, others shook their heads. What had started as curiosity was shifting into unease. The tall man tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly. His silence pressed like a weight, and the leader squirmed beneath it. Finally, the man spoke. "Do you even hear yourself?" The leader bristled. "What? You stand on my porch," the tall man said, voice measured, "with fake badges, fake rules, fake power. And you expect me to believe you speak for this community? No, you speak for your fear." The words landed like stones. The second man stepped back, muttering, "He's twisting this. He's making us look bad." The leader rounded on him. "Shut up and help me." Then, in a rash move, he shoved the tall man hard in the chest. The force should have staggered him, should have knocked him back into his doorway. But the man didn't move. It was as though the shove had hit a wall of steel. His shoulders absorbed it effortlessly, his feet anchored deep. He simply looked down at the hand still pressed against his chest. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his gaze back up. The leader's confidence faltered. "You shouldn't have done that." The tall man said softly. Something in the way he said it, quiet, controlled, final, spread a chill through the air. Even. The neighbors fell silent, breaths caught. The leader tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. "You don't scare me." The tall man's eyes didn't blink. "Then you're not smart enough to be scared." The second man tugged at his partner's sleeve. "We need to leave. Now. This is getting out of hand." But the leader wrenched free, shouting, "No. He needs to learn who's in charge here." The tall man stepped forward, just enough that his shadow stretched across both of them. His voice lowered, but every neighbor could feel its gravity. "You think a badge makes you powerful? You think a clipboard makes you law?" His gaze burned into theirs. "Power isn't claimed by pretending. It's earned. And when you lie about it—" He paused, the silence loaded like a chambered round. It destroys you." The second man looked away, shame flickering across his face. The leader, however, puffed himself larger, clinging to arrogance like a shield. "You'll regret crossing me," he growled. The tall man's lips curved in that faint, dangerous smile again. "No, you'll regret crossing me." Gasps rippled again through the crowd. The tension was unbearable now, a storm building in the still night. The leader stepped back, but covered it with a sneer. He yanked his radio from his belt, pressed the button, and barked into static. Unit 3 requesting backup subject is resisting. But only white noise crackled back. The neighbors exchanged looks. Backup? Unit 3? This wasn't real. The illusion was collapsing in front of them. The tall man folded his arms, gaze steady. You can call all you want. No one's coming, the leader froze. How could he know that? The second man whispered, almost trembling now. Who is this guy? The tall man said nothing. He just let the question hang, unanswered, a riddle wrapped in silence. The night was shifting. The crowd knew it. The imposters felt it. And the man. At the center of it all was only just beginning to show them the truth. Enough games. Step inside, we're searching your house. The leader's voice boomed louder than necessary, as if decibels could disguise the cracks in his authority. His partner shifted uneasily beside him, tugging at the edges of his vest. The tall man raised an eyebrow. Search? Without a warrant? HOA ordinance gives us the right. The leader jabbed his finger at the doorway, a thin sheen of sweat glistening on his temple. Section 12 permits property inspections at any time. From the street, a voice rang out. That's not how it works. Heads turned. A neighbor, an older man in a bathrobe, had stepped onto his porch, arms folded. He spoke louder this time, anger edging his tone. You can't just walk into someone's house. The leader's face burned crimson. Go back inside, old man. This doesn't concern you. But it did. More silhouettes emerged. Curtains opened. Fully. People leaned on fences, arms crossed, eyes sharp. The imposters had wanted an audience, but now the crowd was no longer on their side. The tall man glanced briefly at the gathering witnesses, then back at the two on his porch. His expression hadn't changed. Calm, steady, faintly amused. Seems. Your ordinance isn't very popular, he said quietly. The second man tugged at his partner's sleeve. We're losing them. Let's back down. The leader snapped. No. If we back down now, he wins. His voice cracked, betraying the panic beneath the bravado. He turned back to the tall man, forcing his chin up. You've got two options: step aside or get dragged out. The tall man tilted his head. Dragged? By who? The silence that followed stung like a slap. The second man cleared his throat, desperate to fill it. We've got backup on the way, he lied, voice trembling. The tall man's lips curled into the faintest smile. Backup? He leaned closer, his voice dropping low but carrying across the porch. If you had real backup, they'd already be here. The second man flinched. The leader lashed out, grabbing the man's arm. You think you're smarter than us? You think you can stand there and make us look like fools? The tall man's eyes dropped to the grip on his sleeve. He didn't resist, didn't pull back, just stared down at the pale fingers clutching him. His silence made the hold look pitiful, weak. Then slowly he spoke. Let go. The words were simple, but layered with steel. The leader tried to laugh. Or what? The man's gaze sharpened, and for the first time, a spark of something more than calm flickered there, something dangerous. Or you'll find out. The leader snatched his hand back instinctively, as though the words alone carried force. He covered it quickly with a sneer. You're not scary. You're nothing but a... He stopped. The crowd was watching too closely now. Even he knew some words couldn't be shouted in public without consequence. He bit down on his pride, but his eyes spat the venom he didn't dare say. The tall man read it anyway. His reply was soft, almost a whisper, but the whole street seemed to hear. And yet here you are, trembling. The second man's shoulders sagged. His eyes darted to the neighbors, their disapproving frowns, their muttered whispers. The illusion of control was slipping through their fingers. People are watching, he hissed. We can't keep this up. The leader's jaw locked. Then we shut them up. He turned toward the crowd. Everyone mind your own business. This is official enforcement. Go back inside or you'll face charges too. Laughter broke out. Real, unrestrained laughter. It spread like wildfire, rolling down the block. Someone clapped sarcastically. Another shouted, Charges for what, Clown College? The leader's face went beet red. The tall man let the noise swell before he spoke again, cutting through it. Like a blade. They don't believe you, they never did. The leader spun on him, eyes wild. Shut your mouth. The tall man's voice didn't rise, but its weight silenced the laughter. Why should I? You came here pretending to be police, waving paper and plastic, hoping fear would do the rest. His gaze swept the street. But fear only works until the truth shows its face, the crowd murmured, nodding. The balance was shifting. The leader staggered, feeling the ground tilt under him. His partner looked ready to bolt, but still, pride roared louder than reason. The leader pulled the fake badge from his vest, thrust it high. I am the law here. The tall man's eyes narrowed. His reply was quiet but devastating. No, I am. The words froze the air. The leader blinked, confused. The second man's mouth fell open. The neighbors leaned forward, the sense of revelation stirring. The tall man didn't elaborate. He let the weight of his words hang, heavy, unanswered. A crack in the mask that only made the imposter's collapse come faster. And for the first time, the street began to wonder not who the fake officers were, but who exactly this man was. Last. Warning. Step aside, or I swear we'll drag you out in front of everyone. The leader's voice quivered with desperation, though he tried to mask it as authority. His grip tightened around the useless cuffs, his knuckles pale in the glow of the porch light. The tall man didn't move. He simply folded his arms, gaze steady. You keep repeating the same line, he said softly. But threats don't become real just because you shout them louder. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The street was filling now. Neighbors clustered in small groups, whispering, pointing, recording with glowing phone screens. What had begun as curiosity had become a spectacle. The second man tugged at his partner's arm, voice trembling. They're filming this. We have to go. But the leader shoved him back, rage bubbling. I'm not leaving until he's in custody. The tall man tilted his head, voice calm as ever. Custody. You keep using that word like it means something. But you've got no badge, no warrant, no training. All you have is a clipboard and a fantasy. Laughter broke out across the lawn. A woman shouted, Tell him again. The leader's face flushed deep crimson. He lunged forward, this time shoving the man hard in the chest with both hands. Again, nothing. The tall man absorbed the blow. Like stone, his arms didn't uncross, his body didn't shift. He simply stared at the hand still pressed against him. You really want to do this? He asked, his tone sharper now, like a blade unsheathed. The leader froze. Something in the man's eyes stopped him cold. It wasn't just defiance, it was recognition, the kind of stare only men in real authority carried. The second man stammered. He's not normal. Something's wrong here. The tall man leaned in just enough for only them to hear. His voice was low, dangerous. You're right. Something is wrong. And it's you standing on my porch pretending to be something you're not. The leader tried to bark back, but his words caught in his throat. For the first time, he felt it, the pressure, the weight in the air, as if the ground itself had chosen sides. The neighbors felt it too. Whispers carried. He's not scared at all. Did you see his eyes? He looks like he's done this before. The tall man finally unfolded his arms. He reached behind him, not rushing, not dramatic, just deliberate. His hand disappeared into the shadows of his doorway. The leader stiffened, half a step back. What are you doing? The man's hand emerged, holding a small leather-bound case. He flipped it open with a snap. Gasps broke out, even in the dim light. The glint of a golden badge shone clear. Not the cheap tin pinned to the impostor's chests, but the heavy seal of the federal government. Letters caught the glow. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The leader staggered back a full step. No, that can't be the second man's. Face drained of color. His mouth opened, closed, no words forming. The neighbors erupted. Voices shouted, questions fired, disbelief spread. Some stepped closer to get a better look, their cameras zooming in. The badge gleamed undeniable. The tall man's voice cut through the noise, calm but ringing with iron. You walked onto my property. You threatened me. You tried to impersonate law enforcement. He closed the badge case with a snap. And now you've crossed into federal crime. The crowd gasped again. Phones shot higher into the air. Someone muttered, FBI? He's FBI? The leader's pride crumbled. His bluster drained out of him, leaving only a trembling shell. You're lying. That's fake. Has to be fake. The tall man stepped closer, his presence swallowing theirs. His words were low, but the whole block seemed to hear them. Fake? You think I need to play pretend like you? The leader stumbled back another step, nearly tripping off the porch. His partner whispered urgently, "We have to run. We can't fight this." But the tall man wasn't finished. He raised his voice just enough for the crowd. I've been patient. I've been calm, but patience has its limits. You wanted to play police tonight? His gaze cut sharp as glass. Now you're about to deal with the real thing. The silence that followed was deafening. The neighbor's eyes widened. The imposter's knees shook. The storm had broken. The man they thought was just another target was something else entirely, something dangerous, something untouchable, and the imposters finally knew they had picked the worst possible door to knock on. No. The leader's voice cracked, shrill and panicked. He shook his head violently, sweat dripping down his temple. That badge fake. It's fake. He's bluffing. The second man's voice was a whisper. That's not fake. I've seen those before. He's real. The leader rounded on him, fury blotting out reason. Shut up. Don't you dare side with him. The tall man closed the badge with a deliberate snap, slipping it back into his pocket. His eyes never left theirs. His voice, steady as steel, carried across the porch. You just made a mistake you can't walk back from. The leader's chest heaved. His pride screamed at him to push harder, even as his instincts begged him to run. I'm not afraid of you, he spat, his voice trembling. The tall man's reply was calm, deadly. Then you're not listening closely enough. The crowd leaned forward, hungry for the unraveling. Phone zoomed in, whispers turned into full sentences. He's FBI. They're finished. Wait until this hits the news. The leader felt. The weight of every lens pointed at him. His authority had cracked beyond repair, but still he tried to patch it with rage. He yanked his plastic badge off his vest and thrust it forward. This says I'm in charge. This says I have authority. Woman from the crowd laughed out loud. That looks like it came from a toy store. The street erupted in laughter. The sound rolled over him like a wave, drowning whatever was left of his dignity. His face turned scarlet, veins bulging at his neck, and then snap. Something inside him broke. With a roar, he lunged forward, grabbing the tall man by the shirt with both fists. You think you can laugh at me? You think you can humiliate me? Gasps tore through the crowd, but the tall man didn't flinch. He stood rooted, his body unmoved by the frantic grip. His eyes, cold and unyielding, bore into the man's face. Let go, he said. The leader shook him violently, spittle flying. Make me. In that instant, the tall man moved. It wasn't wild. It wasn't rushed. It was precise. He caught the leader's wrists, twisted them with effortless control, and in one smooth motion had the man bent forward, gasping, his arms locked behind his back. The plastic cuffs clattered uselessly to the floor. The crowd roared. Cheers mixed with gasps, the sound of justice unfolding in real time. The second man froze, his mouth hanging open. How did you? The tall man looked up, eyes sharp, voice ringing with authority, tactical control hold. Standard FBI procedure. Maybe you should take notes. The leader squirmed, his voice shrill. Get off me. This is assault. The tall man tightened the hold just enough to still him. His voice dropped, cold as winter. No, this is arrest. The words rang out like a verdict. The neighbors erupted again. Applause, whistles, shouts of approval. Someone shouted, "Lock him up." The second man panicked. He scrambled backward off the porch, clutching his vest like a life jacket. We can still fix this. We just need to. The tall man's gaze snapped to him, sharp as a blade. Don't. The single word froze him in place. The leader thrashed, humiliated, rage breaking into fear. You can't do this to me. I'm respected here. I run this neighborhood. The tall man leaned close, his voice quiet but lethal. No, you run nothing. You're just another fraud who thought fear could make you powerful. The leader whimpered as the truth cracked him open. His pride, his fake authority, His imagined control, all of it lay shattered at the feet of the man he had tried to break. The crowd wasn't whispering anymore. They were shouting openly, "Call the real cops. Get him out of here. We've got it all on video." The second man staggered, trembling, caught between fleeing and collapsing. His voice broke. "Please, please don't arrest me too." The tall man's eyes pinned him like a hawk. "You came with him. You threatened me. You stood on this porch with a badge you didn't earn." The second man shook his head desperately. I didn't want to. He made me." The tall man's reply was ice. "That excuse doesn't hold up in court." The neighbors gasped again. Court. Law. This wasn't just a fight in the night. This was real. The leader whimpered, struggling weakly against the grip that held him firm. The tall man spoke loud enough for everyone. "Impersonating an officer. Harassment. Attempted unlawful entry. That's federal time." The crowd cheered. The second man's face went pale. He knew the words weren't bluster. This wasn't pretend. Authority. This was the real thing. The tall man raised his voice over the noise, crisp and commanding. "Everyone here, keep your cameras rolling. Witnesses matter." Phones shot higher into the air, the crowd energized. The leader groaned, broken, under the weight of his own arrogance. The second man sagged, shaking, ready to crumble. And the tall man stood unshaken, a storm of calm fury showing the world that the imposters had just played their last card and lost. Red and blue lights slashed across the neighborhood. The crowd parted like a wave as the sirens drew closer. Phones shot higher into the air, capturing every angle, every detail. Neighbors muttered in anticipation. Finally, the real cops. This is it. The tall man didn't release the leader from the hold. His grip was steady, controlled, as if he'd done this 1,000 times before. The leader wheezed, his face pressed against the porch railing, humiliation searing deeper than pain. The second imposter stumbled backward into the yard, shaking his head like a trapped animal. No. This isn't happening." 2 squad cars rolled up, lights flashing, tires crunching against the pavement. Uniformed officers spilled out, hands on their belts, scanning the scene. One of them barked, "What's going on here?" The crowd erupted in overlapping shouts. "They're fake cops. They tried to arrest him with toy badges. He's FBI. We've got it all on video." The officer raised a hand. "One at a time." His gaze snapped to the porch, where the tall man stood unflinching, holding the leader firmly. In a tactical lock, the officer's eyes narrowed. "Sir, release him. We'll take it from here." The tall man's voice carried calm authority. "Not yet. You'll want to hear the charges first." The lead officer stiffened. "And who exactly are you to be calling charges?" The tall man reached into his jacket with slow, deliberate motion. He flipped open his badge again, the gold, gleaming under the flashing patrol lights. "Special Agent Marcus Halle, Federal Bureau of Investigation." The air seemed to shift. The officer's face froze, then straightened with sudden respect. "Agent Halle." He glanced back at his partner, then forward again. "Understood. Proceed." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The whispers turned into cheers. "FBI, I knew it. They messed with the wrong guy." The leader groaned, humiliated, his face red and swollen with rage. "Lies. It's still a lie." He sputtered, but the sound of his denial was drowned out by the crowd's laughter. Agent Halle spoke clearly, his voice sharp as glass. "This man and his accomplice impersonated officers. They attempted unlawful entry onto my property. They issued threats under color of authority they do not possess." He tightened the hold just enough to elicit a yelp from the leader. Charges: impersonation of law enforcement, harassment, conspiracy, attempted trespassing, federal violations. The real officers moved forward at once. Their tone was clipped. "All business now." "Copy that, Agent Halle. We'll take them into custody." The leader thrashed wildly, spitting out curses. "You can't do this. I am the law here. I run this neighborhood." The officer nearest him gave a cold laugh. "You're about to run a prison block, buddy." The crowd exploded again, laughter and applause echoing through the street. Phones captured every second, the imposter's downfall broadcast live across The neighborhood. The second imposter fell to his knees in the yard, hands raised. His voice cracked with desperation. Please, I didn't want any of this. He made me do it. Agent Hale's eyes cut toward him, cool and unwavering. You had a choice. You chose wrong. An officer moved in, cuffing the trembling man with professional efficiency. The leader screamed, fighting like a child throwing a tantrum. Get your hands off me. I'm in charge. I clicked. The sound of real handcuffs shutting around his wrists silenced him. The crowd roared in approval, some clapping, others whistling, all of them reveling in the spectacle. A woman near the front shouted, "That's what happens when you fake authority." Agent Hale stepped back finally, releasing the man into the custody of the officers. His calm presence seemed to radiate more than ever. One officer nodded at him. Agent Hale will process them at county. Do you want to file your report directly? Hale gave a curt nod. I'll forward it to the federal office. These charges don't stay local. The leader's face drained of color. His voice came out in a strangled whisper. Federal? No, no, no. The crowd ate it up, laughter mixing with jeers. Enjoy prison, fake cop, someone yelled. The second imposter buried his face in his hands, already broken. The leader sagged, his chest rising and falling in panic. For the first time, his arrogance had nowhere left to go. The patrol car doors slammed shut behind them. Their muffled shouts lost inside. The neighborhood exhaled. Relief, vindication, pride had all washed over them at once. They looked not at the squad cars, but at the man who had stood his ground. Agent Hale adjusted his jacket, his calm composure unshaken. His gaze swept across the crowd, and though he said nothing, his presence spoke volumes. Justice doesn't bow to fakes. And tonight, the whole neighborhood had seen it with their own eyes. The flashing lights faded down the street as the patrol cars carried the two imposters away. Their shouts were muffled behind steel and glass, swallowed by the night. But in the neighborhood, silence didn't return. Instead, it was replaced by a wave of chatter. Neighbors who had watched in stunned disbelief now buzzed with excitement. Voices overlapped like a rising tide. Did you see his face when they cuffed him? Priceless. I got the whole thing on video. Wait until this hits the HOA Facebook group. Phones glowed everywhere, fingers flying across screens. Some people uploaded clips instantly. Others called relatives, laughing breathlessly as they retold the drama. One man slapped his knee and shook his head. All these years he strutted around acting like king of the street. Tonight, he's just another criminal. A group of teenagers replayed their recording, zooming in on the moment the leader screamed as the cuffs clicked shut. Their laughter carried across the lawns. On the porch, Agent Hale remained composed, his presence calm as a tide against the storm of voices. He didn't bask in the attention. He didn't need to. The neighborhood was doing it for him. He's FBI. FBI. Can you believe it? That explains why he never flinched. He was trained. The imposter's reputation unraveled in real time. For years, the leader had bullied with fake authority, parading around with self-made rules and empty threats. Now every ounce of that fake power had been burned away in the public eye, and the ashes spread fast. Within minutes, videos had jumped from one group chat to another. By the time the crowd began to disperse, the clips were already circulating on wider social media platforms. Comments poured in. This is the funniest thing I've seen all week. Imagine pretending to be a cop and getting arrested. In front of the real FBI. Hope they enjoy orange jumpsuits. The imposters weren't just a neighborhood embarrassment anymore. They were turning into a viral joke. Inside his car, a young neighbor scrolled through posts, shaking his head in disbelief. Dude, it's already on Twitter. Look, 20,000 views. Another voice gasped. No way. Way and climbing. The energy in the neighborhood grew electric. Every person who'd been silenced or intimidated by the imposters before felt something shift inside them. It wasn't just relief, it was vindication. One older resident, a man who had often been fined by the fake rules, muttered to his wife, I told you, one day his arrogance would catch up with him. His wife smiled softly. It caught up faster than we ever imagined. Children who had once been told not to ride bikes down certain sidewalks now darted freely up and down the street, laughing louder than usual. The fear was gone. Across the lawns, small clusters of neighbors kept pointing toward Hale. Some approached him hesitantly. "Agent Hale, thank you. You don't know how long he's been making our lives miserable." Hale gave a polite nod. Justice has a way of finding pretenders. Tonight was no exception. A woman wiped her eyes, laughter and tears mingling. "The way you handled him, it was like watching a movie. But real." Hale didn't smile. But his calm acknowledgement made her feel heard. Meanwhile, in the back of the patrol car miles away, the leader's tantrum continued. He banged his fists against the glass, his voice shrill. "I'll sue all of you. I'll take this neighborhood down. You can't humiliate me like this." The officer driving chuckled under his breath. "Buddy, humiliation's already done. The internet's faster than you." The second imposter sat in silence, slumped and pale. He knew it was true. Every phone that had recorded them was a nail in their coffin. Every laugh outside those windows was proof that their empire of fear had crumbled back in the neighborhood. Night air buzzed with a strange joy. People lingered, unwilling to leave just yet. They wanted to keep savoring the freedom, the justice, the shared moment of unity. "Tomorrow," someone said, "this whole town will be talking about it." Another voice replied, "Tomorrow? Try tonight. It's already everywhere." The imposters had built their influence on intimidation. Now that same neighborhood was building their downfall on exposure. Every share, every post, every replay of the video was another strike against them. Their carefully curated mask of authority had shattered, replaced by the image of them screaming, begging, and being dragged away in cuffs, and the irony wasn't lost on anyone. "Funny, isn't it?" One man said with a grin. "They pretended to be the law. Now the real law is the only thing they'll be answering to." Laughter rippled again. On the porch, Agent Hale finally turned toward the door, his posture still upright and composed. Before stepping inside, he glanced back at the crowd. His eyes met theirs, steady and unshakable. For the first time that night, he spoke words that were not directed at the imposters, but at the neighbors. "Remember this. Truth always outlasts lies. Real authority doesn't have to shout, it proves itself." The crowd grew quiet, hanging on his words. Then, almost as one, they erupted again, this time not in laughter, but in applause. The imposters were gone. Their power was gone, and in its place, the neighborhood had gained something stronger. The knowledge that justice, once awakened, could not be silenced again. By dawn, the neighborhood was unrecognizable. Satellite trucks lined the street, their tall metal antennas piercing the sky. Bright floodlights cut across the lawns, cameras rolled, and reporters swarmed like bees to honey. What had begun as a midnight drama had now transformed into a headline story. "Good morning, viewers," one reporter said crisply into her microphone. "We live in the quiet suburban neighborhood where two men posing as law enforcement were dramatically arrested last night. Cell phone footage captured by residents has already gone viral, racking up millions of views overnight." Behind her, neighbors stood in clumps, giving their own on-camera interviews. Some smiled, some gestured passionately as they described years of intimidation. "He fined me for leaving my trash bin out 2 hours late," one man said, still incredulous. "He threatened to tow my car for parking in front of my own house." Another added, "And a woman cut in. He once told my daughter she couldn't play on the sidewalk because it was a restricted area. Can you imagine? A sidewalk?" The cameras ate it up. Every detail painted the same picture, a petty tyrant exposed in the most public way possible. The imposters' names, released by the police overnight, scrolled across news tickers. Harold Whitaker and Steve Dempsey. Harold, the self-declared commander of the fake HOA patrol, now had his mugshot plastered on every screen. His arrogant sneer had been replaced with a wild-eyed scowl, the perfect image of a man whose empire had crumbled. Steve, his quieter partner, looked hollow in his booking photo. A man already broken by humiliation. Employers called in immediately to distance themselves. Harold's cushy office job released a statement. "We do not condone his behavior. Mr. Whitaker is no longer employed with our company." Steve's workplace followed hours later. Effective immediately, his services are terminated. Neighbors, now emboldened, told every camera about the years of bullying. Old stories resurfaced like skeletons unearthed from shallow graves. He once tried to give me a ticket for painting my door blue, one woman said to NBC. He carried a fake citation pad. It would be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. The crowd chuckled, and the laughter carried live on national TV. Meanwhile, Harold sat in a holding cell watching the morning news from a mounted television. His jaw tightened with every report. They're lying, he snarled. All of them. I had authority. Steve cut him off quietly. No, Harold, we never had authority. And now the world knows. The silence that followed was heavier than steel. Back in the neighborhood, Agent Hale kept to the edges, dressed plainly now. The cameras wanted him, but he declined every request. No interviews, he told the reporters flatly. This isn't about me. That only made him more mysterious. Online, speculation swirled. Who was the calm man who confronted the fake officers? Was he undercover? An FBI agent? A federal marshal? No one knew for sure because Hale didn't tell them. He didn't need to. The spotlight in his mind belonged on justice itself. By noon, the story had spread beyond local news. National outlets ran with it. Late-night comedians poked fun at it, and hashtags trended. Clips were remixed into memes. Harold screaming in cuffs became a gif. Steve's defeated expression was used as a punchline template. The internet, ruthless and creative, ensured their humiliation would never be forgotten. In the mayor's office. Downtown, the scandal prompted swift action. We're conducting a review of local HOA oversight, the mayor told reporters. This incident shows the dangers of self-appointed authority. We cannot allow private individuals to masquerade as law enforcement. Applause broke out from citizens gathered outside. The arrest wasn't just a neighborhood victory anymore, it had become a rallying cry against abuse of power everywhere. Families called into radio shows. I've had neighbors like that before. It feels so good to see one finally taken down. On social media, strangers thousands of miles away cheered, shaking their heads at the absurdity. Only in America does a fake HOA patrol end up cuffed. On live news. But in the quiet of his home, Hall watched the coverage with a steady gaze. He didn't smile, didn't cheer. For him, it wasn't about spectacle. It was about accountability. He closed the laptop after a few minutes and looked out the window. The imposters had been unmasked. The neighborhood was free. But Hale knew justice's work never ended. Still, as the sound of children playing freely outside drifted through his window, he allowed himself a rare breath of satisfaction. What had been broken was finally mended. And across the city, one lesson rang louder than every headline, every post, every laugh. False power collapses the moment real truth arrives. The courthouse was packed. Every seat in the gallery filled early, long before the trial even began. Reporters jockeyed for position, cameras flashed, and the air hummed with the kind of anticipation reserved for history-making moments. At the defense table sat Harold Whitaker and Steve Dempsey. Their suits looked borrowed, ill-fitting, like costumes from a play in which they no longer belonged. Their heads hung low, their swagger gone. Behind them, whispers swirled. Citizens who had once feared them now spoke openly, relishing the reversal of power. The judge entered, her gavel cracking once. Silence fell like a curtain. This court, she said firmly, is now in session. The prosecution wasted no time. They played footage of Harold and Steve strutting down neighborhood streets in fake uniforms, issuing bogus citations, shouting at families. Each clip landed like a blow, stripping away the last shred of credibility. Neighbors testified one by one. He fined me for letting my kids chalk on the sidewalk. He threatened to tow my car if I didn't park perfectly straight. He called my wife a trespasser in our own yard. The jury watched, their faces tightening with every word. Harold, fuming, finally snapped. He shot up from his seat. "This is outrageous," he shouted. "I was enforcing order. I was protecting the community from chaos." The judge's gavel slammed again. "Mr. Whitaker, sit down or I'll hold you in contempt." The courtroom buzzed, half with shock, half with laughter. The man who once barked false orders now silenced by real authority. Steve didn't move. His shoulders slumped as if he already knew the outcome. The defense attorney tried to argue. Your Honor, my clients were simply misguided citizens. The judge cut him off. Impersonating law enforcement is not a misunderstanding. It is a crime, and it is dangerous. Hours stretched into days. But when the jury returned, their verdict was swift. On all counts, the foreman read, we find the defendants guilty. Gasps rippled across the room, followed by applause. The gavel struck again for order, but the energy was unstoppable. The sentence came next. For impersonating law enforcement, harassment, fraud, and unlawful intimidation, the judge declared, I sentence Harold Whitaker and Steve Dempsey to 3 years in prison and a permanent ban from serving in any community authority role. The imposters froze. Their empire of intimidation, their fantasy of control, ended with the clang of steel cuffs once more. The crowd outside erupted when the news broke. Cheers filled the courthouse steps. Neighbors hugged, children laughed, and reporters delivered the breaking story live. But amidst the chaos, one figure remained calm. Steady Agent Hawley. He stood near the back, watching quietly. He hadn't testified, hadn't taken credit, hadn't sought the spotlight. He didn't need to dot as Harold and Steve were led away in shackles. Hale's eyes followed them only briefly. Then he turned and walked into the sunlight. Outside, a reporter spotted him. Sir, please, just one question. Who are you really? An agent? A federal officer? What's your name? Hawley paused. For a moment, the crowd hushed, waiting. Then, he simply said, I'm just someone who believes in truth. With that, he walked away. No cameras followed, only silence and respect. That night, the neighborhood gathered for the first time in years without fear. Families shared food in the open. Children played in the street, and laughter replaced whispers. The air felt lighter. Free dot at the center of it all, a once feared neighbor raised a toast. To justice, she said, smiling, and to never letting false power rule us again. The crowd cheered Dot far away. In a quiet diner on the edge of town, Agent Hawley sipped his coffee alone. He didn't need to be part of the celebration. Seeing freedom restored was enough. The waitress approached, curious. Long day? Hawley smiled. Faintly, long story. And with that, he placed a few bills on the counter, stood, and disappeared into the night just as he had arrived. No fanfare, no spotlight. Just the quiet certainty that truth had prevailed, and in the neighborhood he left behind, one lesson would echo for generations. Power built on lies always falls. Truth always stands.